come on up, Emily and Marilyn. So I'm glad we got this going because they're actually really fabulous slides so you can get a visual about what we're talking about today in terms of looking at incubating and accelerating new business ventures. So Emily Reichert is the CEO of Greentown Labs in Somerville. It's the largest clean tech startup incubator in the U.S. You heard from her this morning, but we're hoping that with this session we'll get into a little bit more details. You'll get some visuals about like what this amazing space down in Somerville looks like and is all about. So Emily, it's all you.
Wrong slides. So good afternoon, everyone. I would love to see a little bit more energy in this room, so I'm going to ask a few questions to start. So how many of you are interested in starting an entrepreneurial organization, either in your city or state of Vermont, or you're excited about doing that? I want you to stand up. Yeah, look around.
Right.
So I'm hoping what Marilyn and I will both be sharing today will be some good guidance, some good ideas for kind of what works in our ecosystem in Boston, and the Village Capital ecosystem is actually global, so that'll be a very different perspective. But I think what we'd like to do with this session is very much make it interactive. So I'm going to go through some slides, she's going to go through some slides, and then we're hoping to have some Q&A and fun discussion. So sound like a plan? All right, so Greentown Labs. So I had my nice introduction from Ellen. I'm Emily Reichert, and I run Greentown Labs, and we're the largest clean tech incubator in the United States. And our mission is to help clean tech companies to get their technology out into the world, which is basically what this very long thing says here. But it is our mission, and that's what we do every single day. We're a mission-based organization, a B corporation, similar to Patagonia. Next. Let's see, I do the next slide. Or not. Oops, there we go. All right. So for those of you who were here this morning, you might have heard a little bit of this story, but I'll also make it relatively quick. So Greentown was started by accident. It was not anyone's economic development plan. It was not even a plan. It was 4 companies, startup companies, 2 to 3 people apiece, who were graduating from a local university and needed a place to build prototypes after they graduated. And they came together in a warehouse in East Cambridge, which is the picture up there. They worked together for 4 months, and then that building got knocked down to build a biotech building. And so they found themselves in a basement, sub-basement, in South Boston, and were there for about 2 years before South Boston went nuts relative to real estate prices. When they moved in there, $10 to $12 a square foot. When they moved out, $54 a square foot. In the meantime, this group of 4 entrepreneur teams had grown to 9 and then 15 within 2 years. And all these entrepreneurs were really sharing space. You know, one guy would order the toilet paper, another one would order the beer. You know, it was basically a kind of a collective. Well, they had a problem, and that is that they were growing fast, and they also needed a home. And so I came in 2013 and helped them find both. And so the next picture up there you'll see is where we moved. It's a suburb of Boston called Somerville, Massachusetts. And that is kind of the industrial part of Boston. So Boston is where the pretty high-rises are. Somerville is where they put the nasty, like, bleach and chemical stuff back in the day. And so it has a lot of underutilized, or did have a lot of underutilized real estate space, some of which we could come in and take over with a great partnership with our mayor of Somerville, Joe Curtatone, who reminds me of your mayor here, which is really cool. So we moved in back in 2013 and went from quickly feeling like, oh my God, how are we going to fill this 40,000 square feet, to how did this get so full so quickly? And so our next step in just a few, I think we filled by 2015. Our next step is actually within 2 months to be opening what we're calling a global center for clean tech innovation. It's another industrial building, this time a 1910 foundry building that used to make seamless brass and copper tubing, so it's great like manufacturing space, and that will allow us to accommodate about 100 startups who are doing clean tech prototyping. So from the beginning, founded by entrepreneurs, we've been guided by them all the way through, and that's how we remain focused today. So who are our members? So these probably aren't household names for you yet, although there are a few corporate members that we have that take desk space in our incubator because they are interested in being part of the community as well. But they all have something in common, and that is they are building a startup in the clean tech space that is meant to have a broader impact than just making a profit. These are literally companies that want to change the world. In terms of industry, so who are we there? We define clean tech quite broadly. So it includes for us everything related to agriculture, water and waste, to how to make a building more efficient, to energy generation, so that can be renewables, to robotics and automation, so how do you make a manufacturing process more efficient and use less energy, as well as transportation, which has been talked about quite a lot today. So that's our portfolio. I think this slide is really important to give a grounding because you hear these terms thrown out all the time. Incubator, accelerator, co-working space, like what does all that mean? And I'm giving you the picture from the Boston ecosystem. So this may not be the same way that everyone defines this everywhere, but this is how the Boston ecosystem works. So typically our companies come to us from a university lab. So someone has an idea, a professor, a student, they're working on something in the lab, and they think there might be a business application there. What do they do next? Well, in the Boston area, we have a lot of different competitions. So there's the BU Venture competition, there's the MIT Clean Energy Prize, there's the MIT 100K competition, Tufts has a competition. There's lots of entrepreneurship competitions out there. So often, to go from idea in the lab to business plan, these companies will enter a business plan competition and probably win some kind of prize. Next, what they should do, and typically what they do before they get to us, is that they enter an accelerator program. And so an accelerator program is really a way to kick the tires on a business plan, start forming a team, get a group of mentors that are giving you guidance and giving you really advice on how to make your business plan better. And it's typically done in a pretty intensive process, like 3 months. That's a typical accelerator timeline, although I know that not all of them are going to fit in that box. But there is usually an intensity that is not necessarily the same for the next stage, which is an incubator. And that's what Greentown Labs is. So we specifically focus on companies that are building hardware. So building a physical product that is eventually going to have to be manufactured, hopefully here in the United States. So what these companies typically need to do is when they come to us, they have a prototype. They built something, often in a lab. Maybe they have 1, 2, 5. And while they're with us, they are working on testing and iterating on that prototype, and then ultimately testing a beta product or a product that's about to be done in a real-world environment. And along the way, they need to figure out how they're going to make more of that product. They need to figure out who are their customers and who are their partners. And they need to figure out who are their investors. And so they stay with us. That green stage there is typically 2 years. And then they are able to graduate the incubator when they raise what we refer to as a Series A round of investment, which is somewhere between $5 and $15 million typically. And then the company is ready to go out and scale and be on their own. Whoops, sorry about that. So what do these companies need? I've talked a little bit about what they need in some of my earlier remarks, but this behind me are a few pictures just so you get a sense of what I'm talking about when I'm saying incubator. So an incubator is a space, it is also a community, and it is also a place that provides services, wraparound services for startups. This is the space portion. So this is our prototyping lab. We also have space where the entrepreneurs work, and confusingly, I'm calling that co-working space, but bear with me a little bit. And then up above, we have an event and community space that is where people eat lunch. It's also where we do all kinds of trainings and evening events and panel discussions, where we have companies coming together with members of the community outside of Greentown Labs who are interested in supporting those startups. So what do members get when they go through Greentown Labs? Well, each member, as they come in to Greentown Labs, has access to $130,000 worth of resources, and those range from things like software that pretty much all companies that are building physical products need, like design software. It's also resources like legal services. As well, we have some fun ones, like, you can get a discount to use the local rock climbing gym, because we have a lot of entrepreneurs who do rock climbing. But we also provide them with a whole bunch of shared services, like a shared machine shop, so that companies can access the machine shop. They have to get some training first, but they can build their product right on site, iterate on it, and continue to do that kind of testing that they need to do to grow the company. Another important thing that we provide is really a connection to a set of resources much broader than the incubator itself, and that's our local ecosystem. So clean tech startups are the center of our world. And these partners in the green bubble are all the partners that need to come together to make clean tech startups successful. And so it's our job to bring all these partners together so that they can be accessed by our entrepreneurs. So these include universities, who are sources of talent and sources of startups. They include corporate partners, who are often going to be the first customers of these entrepreneurs. Investors, other startup support organizations. I'm proud to say that in Boston, the startup support organizations as a community, the accelerators, the different programs at the universities, we work together really well, and that's what makes our ecosystem strong. So there's a lot of back and forth, like a company might go through an accelerator program, then come to us, and vice versa. And then finally, we have a strong supportive policy regime in Massachusetts, which allows early stage funding for companies. It's resources in terms of thinking about market development, and that's an important foundational piece of our overall ecosystem. Whoops. Can't quite get the hang of this. So Greentown Labs is part of a national network of incubators that are called the Incubate Energy Network. And what that means is that our entrepreneurs not only have access to Greentown Labs as a place in Boston, but they can go to New York and access investors in New York. They can go to California and other places in the middle of the country. For example, Next Energy in Detroit has resources that allow demonstrations of different kinds of vehicle technology. And the Elemental Accelerator in Hawaii has amazing resources that allow you to test things with their local utility. So there's a lot of different things that companies can access through this network. For us as incubator leaders, it's super powerful to be able to talk to other people that are doing the same thing that you are doing, because there's not too many incubator leaders in the world. And so having a group that you can share best practices with is really, really important. And so this group has been going for about 3 years now, and we're just super excited to continue to grow it. So having all these companies together in one place at one time, providing them with ecosystem resources, space, tools, what does that lead to? This is the summary of results of Greentown Labs to date. And I should say not Greentown Labs, but Greentown Labs companies to date. We've had a lot of Series A round of investments, as well as other investments that come in the form of major grants and contracts that are not listed up here, but of about the same size. We've had 2 recent acquisitions, and we have an 88% success rate. And what that means is that companies are still in business and growing after they finish their time at Greentown Labs. Now, we're only 5 years old, so we don't have a huge amount of time to talk about there, but considering that 95% of all startups are said to fail, and I would argue with that, we're pretty proud of the amount of success these startups have had. And finally, as I mentioned at the very beginning, I wanted to tell you more about our Global Center for Clean Tech Innovation. So why are we saying global? Well, the reason that we're saying global is it's really not just a national problem. It's not a local problem. It's not a state problem. Climate is a global problem. The solutions are going to come from all over the world, and there's entrepreneurs all over the world that can help solve them. And what we envision is a place where you can bring entrepreneurs from all over the world to work together in a very strong ecosystem at Greentown Labs in Boston. And so our Global Center for Clean Tech Innovation is basically an expansion of what we're doing today, but it also has a lot of new capabilities. So for the first time, we'll be able to offer things like a wet lab, where companies that might be working in biofuels or water innovations or chemicals and materials, energy storage, will also be able to have the benefit of being part of the community. So the wet lab, we also have a variety of different things where we have integrated. What we like to do is be able to test things for our members when possible using our own assets and resources. So in our new building, we're testing 5 different companies' technology, one of which is SunWealth, one of our startups, who is putting their solar panels on our roof. And they have a very innovative finance model that has benefits not only for, for the company itself, but has benefits for the community as well. And you'll actually hear from them later today when they're at the future pitch session. So don't hesitate to vote for SunWealth. Sorry, just had to make that little plug. So this is what we're building. It will be opening in November, and that will allow us to be able to accommodate 100 startups in this community, which we are just really excited to continue to be building. So I've already really kind of said this slide, but I guess I will leave it there and ask Marilyn maybe if you want to, or Ellen's going to come up next. But this is our vision. We really want to bring people together from around the world and help support entrepreneurs who are really the ones that are going to be solving this climate challenge. So thank you.
So thank you so much, Emily. This is just so exciting, and this is the first time today to meeting Emily, and so we're just so thrilled because Boston is only 4 hours away from Burlington, so there's already, I know Geoff and Emily have talked about possibilities of folks that go into Accel-VT being able to come down and experience a Greentown Lab and share some opportunities to learn together. So already in this summit, we're like forging new relationships and partnerships, so it's very exciting. I want to bring up Marilyn Waite now from Village Capital. And Marilyn, Village Capital is actually a global accelerator. They run these all over the planet. And Marilyn is also going to be, is our content advisor, an energy expert for Accel-VT. So we're already tapping her expertise, and we'll be joining various times during the course of Accel-VT when we run it. And she's also, as you learned last night, one of the Drawdown Fellows working with Paul Hawkins. So we're just thrilled to have you here as well, Marilyn. So please tell us about Village Capital and your energy accelerators.
Thank you for that. I'm actually not going to talk about Village Capital. No, I won't go through the nuts and bolts of Village Capital. I'm going to give a very high level around that. But I wanted to kind of change the tone and take a step back around why we even need so many incubators and accelerators and support for this really boom and bust story around clean energy and clean tech. So, PDF slides, not PowerPoint, so I have to change that around a little bit. How many of you have heard of DDT? Everyone, right? So starting in the 1940s, DDT was used, the synthetic chemical, to really eliminate malaria and lice. And the propaganda was very vivid. Everything from slogans like, DDT is good for me, all the way to, children spraying DDT, and the images were just very, very compelling. When scientists began to question the environmental impact of DDT, the response was, well, look, I can eat DDT and I haven't dropped dead, so there's no problem. We were asking the question, is DDT immediately harmful to the human body? But it turns out that was the wrong question. Then Rachel Carson came along and she started asking the right question. That being, what is the cumulative impact of DDT in the environment over multiple generations? The answer really changed the fate of DDT and led to a national ban. Many of you are familiar with this graph, the boom and bust story of clean energy financing for startups. Likewise, in this story, we ask ourselves, is clean tech dead? Should we stop investing in it? The conventional electricity and generation supply chain goes something like this in 4 steps. We extract a natural resource, that could be the wind, the sun, gas. We then harness that natural resource using something like a gas turbine. We will then transmit and distribute that resource over very long distances with a grid. And then finally, we'll plug into that resource and use it with our appliances, with our vehicles, and so on and so forth. Well, we're very gridlocked into this system. And what we tend to do is want to improve incrementally, accelerate some improvement on one of these 4 parts of the system. I would say that's the wrong approach. That's the wrong question. If we focus on the ultimate use of energy, why do we care about energy? Is it energy for energy's sake? Or is it how we use it? Is it to move from point A to point B? Is it for having warm meals? Is it for seeing right now? What is the ultimate end use? And by shifting this focus, we will start to have more profitable companies, more disruptive companies, more companies that are solving our climate challenges. So I'm going to walk you through 2 examples of what it looks like to start asking the right questions, which will lead us to these right answers in the clean technology industry. Here's an example. How do we simply move our goods, our health supplies, our food, from point A to point B in the most efficient manner? This is taken from February 2015 in the northeast of the United States. There are 400 vehicles, long-haul trucks, over half of them unavailable due to a cold snap. So if you're a fleet operator, you're spending about $45,000 per year per truck on fuel alone. And then you're also spending about $4,000 per year per truck on unnecessary idling. That's for vehicle uptime and to keep the driver comfortable. IdleSmart, a startup in Kansas City, has offered a solution to that problem. So they have a smart thermostat for Class 8 fleets that really takes in all of this very valuable metrics like cabin temperature, engine temperature, battery voltage, and optimizes the system to decrease idling and improve the fuel economy of trucks. They have measurable impact: fuel consumption, carbon dioxide emissions, particulate matter for air quality, you name it. They have over 1,000 installations on 4 of the top 10 fleets in the United States, with a very strategic partnership with Volvo North America. Now, IdleSmart didn't get there by asking, how can I manipulate electrons? How can I manipulate molecules for diesel fuel engines? They really got there by asking the question, how can I get goods from point A to point B? Focusing on that ultimate end-use function of energy, not energy for energy's sake, but for its end use. The second example, my second question, how should we allocate our capital to optimize for survival and impact? Survival of startups and their environmental, social, and financial impact. Who should be doing this? Who should allocate, and how should it be done if our goal is to really have companies that last and companies that are financially healthy and have a positive social and environmental footprint? Well, the way it's done mostly today is by using a very ivory tower-focused decision-making process. So a small group of investors, an investment committee will get together, maybe even 2 people, 2 general partners in a fund. They'll spend less than 4 minutes on a business pitch and determine the fate of the solutions that are solving these pressing challenges. I would argue that we should shift this to a more on-the-ground approach, and that the decision-making needs to be decentralized towards the people that are working day in and day out in the field solving this problem. So that's the village capital model. We find companies, no matter what the zip code is, no matter what the background is, who are close to the problem, who are solving these real-world challenges. We will train them. A lot of our founders in clean energy, clean technology, they're coming from technical backgrounds, and they don't speak the same language as investors. So we provide that investment readiness training. And then finally, we'll invest in them. Now, this investment process isn't from an ivory tower investment committee. It's from the entrepreneurs themselves. So we will bring those entrepreneurs together that are solving this challenge in the energy sector. And they will perform due diligence on each other. They will provide feedback, very open, very collaborative manner. And then we'll invest in the top 2 to 3 as determined by their peers at the end of this process. We have no voice, no say in that final decision making. It's all in the hands of the group of entrepreneurs we bring together. Turns out the model is very encouraging, seems to be working out. So we've been at this for about 7, 8 years. Our companies that go through this process, which we call peer-selected investments, they have 8 times the follow-on investment and 43% more revenue than their peers, than other cohorts. And 90% of them are surviving. So once again, we're shifting the question, we're shifting the answer. Once we start shifting how we're approaching this, we're shifting the types of answers we get. So if we want to optimize for survival and for environmental, social, and financial impact, then we need to get closer to the ground. So this is working, and I'm so happy that this is the model that Accel Vermont is using for their first climate accelerator. So I mentioned this boom and bust cycle earlier, where 90% of clean energy startups fail to return the initial capital since 2007. We can reverse this trajectory if we start asking the right questions. What are the solutions for the ultimate end-use function of energy? And how can we best allocate capital to optimize for survival and impact? Thank you.
Okay, so we've got a good 15 minutes. Crazy, I know, it sounds like so much time. So let's open it up. Emily and Marilyn laid out a lot. What are you thinking about here? What are your questions?
I'm wondering...
Can you stand up and say your name and... Great question. Who wants it first?
I can go first. So from my perspective, the thing that I see the most often that is kind of a sign to me that this company has a longer road to hoe, so to speak, is the lack of diversity in the top of the team. And I say that in diversity in many different ways. So diversity in how people think about a problem, diversity in splitting the business versus the technical. That's something that you know right off if you've got a technical founder who's just talking at you about the technology and there's no one around who's telling you why the technology matters. That's usually a danger sign. So you want to think about that. I've also noticed in my time running Greentown Labs that oftentimes if there's diversity in gender on the founding team, that those companies, just for whatever reason, seem to go faster. And I don't know if that's because there are, different, it's a diversity of skill sets or what it is exactly, but it's just anecdotal evidence, nothing statistical. So I'd say for me, it's about the founding team rather than just the first person that's pitching me.
So I actually have more advice for investors. But what we actually train the companies during 12 days in person, where they're meeting potential investors and customers. And so we see a huge improvement over those 12 days, from day 1 to day 12. And being able to speak the language of the investor is constantly something that the companies are working on, because they tend to be focused on the customer, which they should be. But investors want to see different things. They have different milestones in mind, different vocabulary they use. And so being able to view their company not from their lens or the customer lens, but also from the investor lens, that's something that we actually bring into our curriculum, and that's one of the gaps we see in the clean tech space.
Geoff, did you want to?
I would say focus. Many of the entrepreneurs I've worked with over the years they have a great piece of technology or a business model that can be used for many different things, but you can't do all those things at once. So focus on your best opportunity, what you know best at first. You can do those things later.
I just want to agree with what Marilyn said and say that understanding how do you speak to your investors also to us means like which type of investor you're speaking to. Everyone thinks that they need to pitch a venture capitalist, but actually oftentimes if you're a clean tech, especially hardware company, the first person you need to pitch is a large corporation like a GE or a Siemens or a Green Mountain Power. And so you need to be able to speak that language, and that is a very different pitch than a pitch to an investor or a traditional VC investor.
Great, thank you. Another question? Yeah, stand up. Who are you?
Hey, how's it going, everybody? My name is Jackson Brockway, and I'm here from the city of Fort Collins, Colorado, representing the local government out there. So I'm going to flip the script a little bit and ask a more city-specific question. So Emily, you mentioned that the role of Mayor of Somerville is really important to helping get the incubator started and moving. So kind of at a general level, I was wondering what are some things that cities can do better to better support their entrepreneurship communities that might be already there but don't quite have the support they need.
I think cities can be helpful in a number of different ways. Let me give a very specific example of how Somerville has helped us beyond finding the space and the building and providing financing. They've also opened their facilities to allowing our entrepreneurs to do testing within, for example, we have weather stations on top of school buildings in the city of Somerville and on the city hall. We've set up solar-powered charging stations at squares where there are many people because there's public transit. And so the city of Somerville, kind of spurred by us, but it's open to other startups, set up a program that they call their Green Tech Program. And it's a way for the city to provide a venue for testing of new entrepreneurial ideas and technology. And that is so critical because whenever you're going to pitch an investor or anyone who might buy into your company, you need to be able to show that there is some validating partner who you've worked with. And having a city as that validating partner can just be really powerful. And so I'd say that that's another way that cities can provide value to entrepreneurs and help their progress. And also, that works in multiple ways, because if a startup starts testing with the city and forms that relationship, they're more likely to stay. So there's lots of benefits in having the city integrated into your incubator or accelerator or your program. In fact, when I was just talking to I think actually you earlier today, I was saying that, get the city and the state involved in your events and really have them at the table from day one. And there's benefits there in terms of potential grant funding, but it's also just engagement. It's an opportunity to help have them be part of the outcome and its success.
Marilyn, is there anything you want to add to that?
No, I would just highlight really the testing part that Emily mentioned, which is so often overlooked. People tend to look at tax incentives and real estate, but really, B2B is big in this industry. B2G is too. It's a business to government. And so government being the first customer is a huge help for the startups.
Great, good. Another question, yeah, Ken?
How
Sure. So at Village Capital, we have 5 sectors, and so our clean energy and clean tech work is separate from our agriculture work, although there is some overlap. So we have a separate sector of agriculture, actually the longest running agriculture accelerator in the United States. And so we issue a problem statement or an investment thesis for every cohort or process that we run for our investments. And that really brings together people in the room, not only in this very broad category called clean technology, but really down to the particular challenge they're solving. As an example, in 2016, we focused on companies that were improving energy efficiency and goods movement. So freight, aviation, shipping, rail, long-haul trucking. And so that's a narrow slice of the clean technology pie, so we can get the most relevant people in the room. So it is very important to, within whatever it is, an accelerator or incubator, to have bring people in the room that can really add value to the companies, and that often will focus on a part of the clean technology space, whatever challenge they're addressing as a startup.
Like Marilyn, at Greentown Labs, we have an application process, and we are looking for companies that are clean tech broadly defined, and for us, that's doing more with less. And that is a wide-ranging set of companies, from agriculture and water all the way to renewable energy. And what we like to say is that you are basically increasing the efficiency or using resources more efficiently, or you're reducing the amount of waste that goes into the environment. And those type of benefits tend to roll up towards solving even one little piece of the bigger climate challenge. And so that's what we're looking for. On our application, we have something that essentially says, how is your company going to save the world? It's not quite worded in that way, but we like companies to justify what is the benefit that you're going to be providing if you're successful. And that's an important part of the application process. So you can't just say you're clean tech. You need to be able to have demonstrated that you've thought about it and really think that the impact of your company is going to be beyond jobs and economic benefits, but is also going to be more broadly climate benefits.
Another question? Yeah, go ahead, Beth.
I might have missed it, but how are you guys funding your organization?
So for Greentown Labs, we are an independent incubator organization, so we're a public benefit corporation. We do not take equity in our companies, so we are completely mission-oriented. The way that we fund our operations is primarily through membership fees that the companies pay to rent desks or lab space from us. And so that accounts for about 65% of our revenues. Then we have another 25 that's roughly 25 that's corporate sponsors. And we have 38 corporate sponsors that are involved in helping our companies in a variety of different ways, as well as providing us support. And then finally, we have a small amount of funding from the state of Massachusetts.
And so we have a hybrid structure at Village Capital. We're part 501c3 nonprofit and part for-profit SEC certified fund. And so our current fund is just under 18 million. You can call it a micro fund with 29 limited partners ranging from high net worth individuals to family foundations, to family offices, the typical makeup of a venture capital fund. And then on the nonprofit side, we are funded by a wide number of means, so foundations, corporations. We license our curriculum and pretty much diversified as a 501c3.
Great. All right, anybody got a last question? Is there anything that, looking out 5-10 years, what do you see on the horizon for incubators and accelerators and their place in the overall development of entrepreneurism in this country and in this space? Where do you want to see us be?
Well, a shift in the questions we're asking.
Sure.
That's for sure. A lot more collaboration among the different entities and a lot more cross-border as well, because all of these products, services, technologies are they're solving challenges that can be applied anywhere in the world for the most part. And so a lot more collaboration domestically, but also internationally. because really to solve these problems, they have to scale.
I think that I'll agree with Marilyn. I think that more partnerships and cooperation, among the different incubators in different geographies, that's already beginning to happen. And then reaching out to partners that are in other parts of the world, because where a solution may be developed here, it may be deployed elsewhere, or a solution may be developed somewhere else and deployed in the United States. So there's really just endless opportunities, and I see incubators really as a platform to enable those kind of interactions to happen around entrepreneurship and around new ideas getting out into the world. So I guess I would say that all of these organizations today, I think there will be many, many more, or else someone's going to come up with another buzzword, and we'll all be saying not incubator and accelerator, but B or C, which is fine. But I think that all of these, there's going to be a lot more entrepreneurship, I think. I mean, especially this current generation finds this very exciting. They want to be part of it. They don't want to work for a large company. Sorry, any corporate sponsors in the room. They want to be in a place where every day they're having an impact. And I think that that's something that entrepreneurship can offer them.
Great. Thank you very much. So final plug for Accel-VT, October 6th, deadline. Talk to Geoff Robertson if you want to learn more. And spread the word for us, please. We really need help with recruitment. And I really want to thank Emily and Marilyn for your time, for your inspiration. This is a great panel. Thank you so much for your questions. And there's one more session before dinner, so stick around. And we'll see you at the dinner tent after that. Thank you so much.